Hi everybody, welcome back to another video on the channel of Dave and Dave. Today I'm going to be talking about a comparison between Xplane 11 and Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So stay tuned for today's video and enjoy the video. Thank you. Okay, so my first point is the selection of aircraft. Which simulator offers the best selection of aircraft? Now, in my opinion, Xplane 11 doesn't offer as good of a selection of aircraft compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator X. There are many more aircraft you can choose from, a much more wide selection you can choose from on Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Xplane 11, the selection of aircraft is very limited in my opinion, so you can't actually get the Airbus on Xplane 11 on the default version, but with Microsoft Flight Simulator X you can get the Airbus as well as many other aircraft as well. So I think Xplane could add an Airbus in for default, but you can get a payroll option where you can actually get the Airbus on Xplane, but it doesn't actually come with it. So I think for that reason, I believe that Microsoft Flight Simulator X gets the first point. So it's 1-0 to Microsoft Flight Simulator X, and Xplane has 0 points at the moment. Let's talk about my next point. Okay, so basically, if you look in the aircraft of Microsoft Flight Simulator X and Xplane 11, I've noticed that the detail on Microsoft Flight Simulator X isn't as good as Xplane's inside the actual cockpit itself. I believe on Xplane the quality is much better. I think that in Microsoft Flight Simulator X it looks a bit washed out on the inside of the cockpit, but Xplane 11 has like much more quality textures. I believe that on Xplane 11 there is many more things you can do in the cockpit as well, which is also really good. So for that reason, I believe that Xplane 11 wins the next point. So now it is 1-1. It's 1-1 between Xplane 11 and Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Okay, let's get on to my next point is the scenery. So when you take off on the plane, obviously you'll notice the scenery. With Xplane 11, I believe the scenery is much better compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Now, the reason being is because on Microsoft Flight Simulator X, the scenery looks a bit washed out, and on Xplane 11 it looks much more quality, and you can see the real details, and it looks much more realistic on Xplane 11 compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So for that reason, Xplane 11 wins the next point. So it's now 2-1 to Xplane 11. Right guys, now let's talk about my next point. Now this one is very interesting actually. I'm going to be talking about the physics of both the flight simulators. So in Microsoft Flight Simulator X, I believe the physics are too weak, but on Xplane 11 I believe they're too extreme. So for instance, if you was doing a weather landing, and you had it on maximum amount of wind you can have, on Microsoft Flight Simulator X, it will be too easy to land. On Xplane 11, it is too hard to land. In real life, it's kind of in the middle between too hard and too easy. So Xplane 11 is too extreme, but Microsoft Flight Simulator X is too weak with the physics. So for instance, if you was landing Microsoft Flight Simulator X, if you landed in really hard winds, it would just be like a normal day flying. But if you was on Xplane 11, the plane is much more likely to sink down to the ground, and it's much more likely to go all over the place than in Microsoft Flight Simulator X. In real life, it's much more different compared to both of them. So, for that reason, both flight simulators don't earn a point on this one. So it's still 2-1 to Xplane 11. So let's get on to my next point. Right, buddy. Now let's talk about air traffic control on both flight simulators. So, obviously, we are on the basic version here, so they probably will be pretty similar as you may think. But this is not the case at all. With Xplane 11, the air traffic control is not as good, I believe, as Microsoft Flight Simulator X. With Microsoft Flight Simulator X, it's much more advanced with air traffic control. You can do more things and it sounds a bit more realistic. With Xplane 11, it just doesn't really seem right, and the air traffic controllers sound very, very static, and it doesn't really appeal to me. So for that reason, I believe that Microsoft Flight Simulator X offers a much better air traffic control, which means that it is now 2-2. It's 2-2 to both flight simulators. So it's now a draw. Now let's get on to the next point, which is going to be very interesting. The next point is about the engine sound. Okay, so in Microsoft Flight Simulator X, the engine sounds very unrealistic. Now with Xplane 11, it sounds more realistic than Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Now the reason being is because on Microsoft Flight Simulator X, the engines sound very odd. With Xplane 11, they sound pretty reasonable. Now, this comes down to mid-flight personally myself. I believe when you're actually on the ground, both of them are as good as each other with the engines, but in mid-flight, the engine it just sounds like it's going all over the place, like with Microsoft Flight Simulator X, and it just seems very, very washed out. It doesn't seem very appealing to me. With Xplane 11, to me, I believe Xplane 11, I believe the engine sounds much more realistic than on Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So for that reason, the score is now Xplane 11 3, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2. So now Xplane 11 has now taken the lead again. Now, one of my final points is the FPS. So, as you may not know, that FPS stands for frames per second. So basically, on Xplane 11, I've noticed the frames per second, that's FPS, is not as good as Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Now, the reason being is because, obviously, with Xplane 11, like, when you're flying, it's obviously more obstacles, but I just believe that with Xplane 11, it's just a bit too jerky for me. But with Microsoft Flight Simulator X, it runs very smoothly, and on most PCs/laptops as well, it runs very smoothly. So for that reason, I believe that Microsoft Flight Simulator X actually wins on that. I think that Xplane 11 is not as smooth. It just feels a little bit weird. Like, my Xplane 11 crashes so much more than Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So when I crashes, I mean the Xplane, like the simulator just quits, like for some reason, because it's too laggy and it just doesn't feel right. So for that reason, I believe it is now a draw. It's 3-all. Xplane 11 3, Microsoft Flight Simulator 3. So who will win? Because this is going to be my last and final point after this discussion has finished. Okay, so my final point is the turning of the aircraft. So what I mean by this is, say if you're on the ground and you're taxiing, and you know when you're turning to line up the runway and all that, well, basically, I believe that Xplane 11 has a much better turning accuracy than Microsoft Flight Simulator X. Now, because basically, when you're controlling it on the ground, the plane, with Microsoft Flight Simulator X, it's too slow to turn. So what I mean is, it just seems a bit unrealistic with the turning. It just takes too slow, it just takes too long, and in order to turn to line up with the taxiway. But with Xplane 11, I believe that the turning is much better in a way that you can actually turn much more efficiently, and it just seems a bit more realistic on Xplane 11, the turning. So, you know what I'm going to say, guys? Xplane 11 has won by 1 point. So basically, because Xplane 11's won, therefore, in my opinion, Xplane 11 is a better flight simulator overall. Now, I can understand the Microsoft Flight Simulator is about 10 years old, but to be honest, I mean, it just shows how much flight simulators have developed over time. Obviously, Xplane 11 is a better simulator from my views. There's also other things as well I find that better about Xplane 11. Yeah, I just think Xplane's overall winner, because even though I'm having many issues at the moment, I believe that Xplane 11 does offer a much better flight simulator compared to Microsoft Flight Simulator X. So guys, if you're thinking about buying a flight simulator, definitely recommend starting off with Microsoft Flight Simulator X. I believe Microsoft Flight Simulator X has a much more selective range of missions compared to Xplane 11, but I decided not to include that in my video today because I wanted to talk about the actual elements of flying. But anyways, yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, please smash the like button, and please press the subscribe button if you haven't already. So yeah, overall Xplane 11 wins. Right, so now let's get on to my final point about the whole video. Please check out Amazon. The link is in the description box down below. They offer some of the best offers and some of the best deals for a really reasonable price. The delivery is usually within a day or two, and you also get an excellent product as well, and it's well worth the price, so definitely check it out. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.